AFC playoffs are all set. It's time for the Broncos to come to Western New York to take on the Bills in the wild card round. Also, a day full of milestones, we'll say, in the Bills' loss at the Patriots. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast, everyone.
And I'm Andy Young from the friendly confines of a Hampton Inn in Franklin, Massachusetts, about 10 minutes away from Foxborough and Gillette Stadium. Not a whole lot to talk about in this game, but I'm sure we'll find a way to do it.
Andy, you got to keep me on my toes. I keep mistakenly say that the Bills are going to take on the Bengals. I've said it like 3 times since the Broncos game ended. It is the Broncos. It is the Bills hosting them and rookie quarterback Bo Nix. And Andy, we'll get to that in a bit as we move forward here. But a loss for the Bills to the Patriots, but a lot of good for the Bills in this one and a lot of bad for the Patriots in this one, to say the least, at the end of the day. We'll stick to the Bills. James Cook with a big afternoon and a lot of incentives met for a number of players who will be getting some extra cash now that the regular season is wrapped up.
Yeah, goal number 1 for this game for the Buffalo Bills was to keep everyone healthy. And Sean McDermott knocked on wood a couple of times after the game that didn't seem to see any new injuries that had popped up immediately after the game. He did couch that with the caveat that sometimes he does hear back on Monday that there were some injuries that popped up, and we've seen that happen. But so far, so good. Coast might be clear there. Knock on wood if you're a Bills fan. The other part of this game was to get some reps for some young guys. Check, that happened. And then check off the list for some other guys to get paid, right? Some guys were trying to reach incentives. Other guys were trying to reach milestones. James Cook hit the 1,000-yard rushing mark for the second time in his career, back-to-back seasons there. And then he also set or tied the Bills' single-season rushing touchdown record that was previously held by O.J. Simpson. And it was funny because it seemed like that was over for him through the first quarter and first half. Ray Davis was in there as the running back at that point, and you didn't know whether if they got down close to the goal line, they might put James Cook back in the game. Well, in the third quarter, they did do just that and got him that one rushing touchdown to tie O.J. Simpson's team record of 16 rushing touchdowns in a season. So good for him on that regard, and I think his offensive linemen were happy that it happened too, because that's an honor for them as well.
Yeah, and of course you had Josh Allen, 115th consecutive start, currently the longest in the NFL right now. And Allen, as many of us expected, came in, hand the ball off to James Cook, adios, heads out the door.
Yeah, I mean, that was the obvious thing that was going to happen. We talked about him maybe playing a series, but the more you thought about it and the way McDermott talked about it earlier in the week, that he was going to be very, very short-lived in terms of how long he's out there. So he got the one snap, keeps his record alive. That's important to him for continuing his streak of 115 consecutive games started, including the playoffs. And then, he waves goodbye and Mitch Trubisky comes on in.
Von Miller didn't last much longer. Gets the sack, he gets his extra money, and then off he went as well.
Yeah, 3 plays, 1 series for Von Miller. He gets a sack of Drake May early on, and that's his 6th sack of the season. That kicks in an incentive, a bonus of $1.5 million. You got to remember, that matters to Von Miller. Yeah, he's made a ton of money in his career, but he did take a pay cut this past offseason to help the Bills out. Normally, that doesn't really happen. A guy just gets cut, or they convert something to a signing bonus, that sort of thing. He actually took a pay cut, so yeah, I'm sure he was happy to get that $1.5 million too.
Yeah, just some of the other guys, because some of this is cool. Mac Hollins needed 2 catches. He got that, got his incentives there. And Sam Martin, the punter, ends up hitting the mark as well in this one, as it seems like everyone was just, you hit incentives as the game went on.
Yeah, Sam Martin's was really cool because he needed to get a punt inside the 20-yard line, so downed inside the 20-yard line between the goal line and the 20, and he was able to do that. And Jamarcus Ingram actually made the play for him. batted the ball back into play before it reached the end zone for a touchback. And then you saw the look of relief and thankfulness on the face of Sam Martin and the way he was gesticulating there on the field as he walked off, because that's $100,000 for him. And for a guy making $1.6 million this season, hey, that's a pretty big chunk of his yearly salary. So good for Sam Martin to make that happen too.
Nice little bonus there for some of those guys. And the other cool thing to see is Buffalo native Joe Andreessen gets to play at middle linebacker and does indeed lead the team in tackles, Andy. And I thought it was interesting hearing from Coach McDermott after. He more wanted to see how Andreessen handled running the defense and everything else involved, not so much as to lead the team in tackles.
Yeah, I mean, that position is so much about communication, right? They're the quarterback of the defense. That's why Terrell Bernard, who sat this game out with a quad, he's basically the captain of the defense, and he's calling the plays. He's relaying the messages from defensive coordinator Bobby Babich. So just the operation and getting the play in and getting the calls and getting people set, that's step one of being the middle linebacker in this Bills defense. The second part of that is making the plays on the field. And McDermott said, yeah, there's probably some plays that Joe wishes he had back, but overall he did pretty well. Joe said the same thing. I made some mistakes out there, but it was pretty cool for my first NFL start and playing the entire game to really go out there and make that happen and to do a pretty good job leading the team in tackles once again, just like he did last week in fourth quarter mop-up duty.
Don't ever want to think about life without Josh Allen, especially this time of year. But Mitch Trubisky does come in. Andy, I thought he ran the offense pretty well at times, protected the ball, had that one touchdown pass, and at times was able to move the ball up and down the field against the Patriots defense.
Yeah, I mean, Trubisky, I mean, we gave him a lot of credit, or grief rather, not a lot of credit during training camp and the preseason, that maybe he wasn't looking too great, and he did a pretty decent job. I mean, albeit against the Patriots, a team that's undermanned and not as talented as the Bills are, but still, he went out there and handled the operation not too shabby. So, I mean, give Mitch Trubisky his flowers. He did okay today.
And it looked like the Bills ended up throwing the ball, and Sean McDermott even went as far as to say this, a lot more than they probably wanted to. I mean, Ray Davis, 15 carries on the ground for 64 yards. Curtis Samuel, 7 receptions in the game. Keon Coleman was out there. Matt Collins was out there. Quentin Morris, Amari Cooper did not play in the game, nor did Khalil Shakir. But the guys in the passing game did contribute to kind of help Mitch Trubisky and Mike White, for that matter, out.
Yeah, it was interesting. The Bills went into this game with only 4 wide receivers. And so when you break that down, I mean, who are you taking out? Shakir didn't really play. So then that's Coleman. You're left with Samuel. You're left with Hollins, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's not a whole lot there to work with. So they had to play those guys and give them some runs. So Samuel had a nice little day. I think Coleman was okay. I mean, he was targeted 10 times, only caught 2 balls. So I guess that wasn't great.
Andy, but Keon Coleman, though, it seemed like they just wanted that highlight deep ball reception for him. I would think I would think 4, maybe even 5 of those balls were deep down the field, hoping that he could go up and grab it.
Yeah, and they're just taking some shots there. I mean, it is what it is. It's Mitch Trubisky throwing to him, so you can't really read a whole lot into all that happened here because they were just they're not showing anything. They're just running some regular plays.
Demar Hamlin ends up getting a lot of playing time in this game. Actually, Rapp came out, and it was Demar and Cole Bishop, which was interesting to see. Rapp, got totally burnt on a touchdown pass earlier in the game, but good to see Demar out there after missing some time.
Yeah, he'd been out for 3 weeks, I believe, and it's interesting because he played the entire game. So if he's your starting safety going into the playoffs, do you want him playing the entire game? Maybe they did because they needed him to get back into the flow of things and take a look at him. When Taylor Rapp came out, Cole Bishop was in with Demar Hamlin. But is there a chance, and some people have been discussing this, that maybe Cole Bishop supplants Demar Hamlin in the playoffs as the starter. I don't know. That'll be very interesting to see. Hamlin said he felt good out there. It was good for him to get back in the flow. He needed to do that to be ready to go. I mean, I didn't ask him directly if he thought he was going to have his starting spot taken away, but I mean, Sean McDermott during the week last week said it is a possibility that there's an expanded role for Cole Bishop. He said we'll see, which in McDermott terms means maybe. So that is a possibility. It'll be interesting to see how that goes this week, or maybe they both get some time. I think Bishop has played better in his second stint than he did at the beginning of the year when he gave up that big deep touchdown pass to Nico Collins in Houston. I think he's improved, and that's part of being a rookie.
Yeah, Cole Bishop has come along a lot while DeMar has been out, Andy, and he even had a really nice pass breakup in this game against the Patriots down towards the end zone.
Yeah, he did, and I think Bishop is a player that's coming on. I think he's a guy that they want to see what he can do. He's a little bit more rangy and athletic than Demar Hamlin is, perhaps. I think that Hamlin kind of plays it safe sometimes, and I think that's a good thing if you're a safety. You don't want to have things get behind you and beat you, but I think maybe Bishop can be a little more of a playmaker. We'll see. I mean, Hamlin has done a nice job. I don't want to take anything away from Demar Hamlin. He's had a really nice year. He's basically been the starter wire to wire since the beginning of training camp. You remember that very first day of training camp at St. John Fisher University, and Demar Hamlin was lined up as a starting safety, and he really never gave that up. So he's had a nice year, but maybe they're finding some packages, some other ways to get Cole Bishop involved.
Even in this game, Andy, the Bills force another turnover on defense, a fumble recovery. Correct me if I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, I think they've had a turnover in every game but one the entire season. That pops into my head off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it was the Rams game that they didn't get a turnover, right?
Yeah, so even in a situation like this where you're playing backups out there, that way this defense is that needs to generate turnovers or that wants to generate turnovers, they did. The thing that I was looking forward to, Andy, and I think a lot of other people were, was a 14th different touchdown pass catcher in this. That was one of the things the Bills were unable to pull off. I mean, they got 2 touchdowns up on the board. The second one, I think you knew it was going to James Cook, where they were. Cook has been out. He comes into the game. Get Cook his 16th touchdown on the ground this season. But the hope of that 14th different pass catcher in the end zone just didn't happen ultimately.
Yeah, on the drive where Ray Davis had his receiving touchdown, the play before that, they went to Mac Hollins. And on that play, Reggie Gilliam rolled out in the flat, just kind of in the same spot where Ray Davis did. And I thought for sure they were going to go for him right there. It wasn't really open, so Trubisky went back across the other way and went to Mac Hollins. That may have been the play design. I don't know.
Right.
But, you know, Reggie Gilliam was the betting favorite. There was a lot of talk about Alec Anderson, the backup offensive lineman who plays that 6th offensive lineman or jumbo tight end role. He would have been a shoo-in for me. It just didn't really materialize. I think getting James Cook to tie the team record for rushing touchdowns was more important than the 14th pass catcher catching a touchdown.
Yeah, and this popping up kind of took me by surprise. I guess I didn't realize it. 30 passing touchdowns this year for the Bills, 30 rushing touchdowns for the Bills this year. The first team ever to do that in the NFL. Joe Brady and company talked about a balanced offense going into this season, and nothing says balance more than that stat right there.
Yeah, I told you on our Buffalo End Zone post-game show on TV after the game that Joe Brady should trademark everybody eats, if it's not already taken, and start selling T-shirts, because that was the mantra from the very beginning of this process through the offseason program that, hey, there's no Diggs who's going to get 150 targets or whatever it might be, or 180 targets. There's no Davis. There's different guys going to be involved, and everybody's going to get a share. And we laughed and joked about it at times throughout this season. But here, look at it. You got 30 touchdown passes, 30 rushing touchdowns. How could you be more balanced than that? The first time it's ever happened in NFL history. That makes the offense really tough to stop. Yes, you love to have that bell cow number one receiver type guy. And obviously, James Cook has been that number one running back, but, Davis and Ty Johnson contributed there as well. And everybody's made passes, caught passes from Josh Allen. So it's been fun to see how that's evolved throughout the season. Even though there were times we criticized it and thought maybe it wasn't working, they figured it out for the most part to the tune of well over 30 points per game this season.
And how about this, Andy, as we move on to the postseason here? It is the Broncos coming to Highmark Stadium for Super Wild Card Weekend. How about if you're the Bengals and you're sitting there right now and you lost to the Patriots to open the season? Patriots fired their head coach, Gerard
Right
Mayo,
after the game.
right after the game. And if you're the Bengals and you needed help to get in, if you just took care of business in the season opener, you're the team that's in, not the Denver Broncos. And the Patriots, of course, win the game, and it really doesn't matter. They lose the top overall pick in the draft. Just a disaster across the board in a game that you won in New England.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was kind of worried about the Bengals getting in and the way that they play offense, and they've obviously wasted a career season from Joe Burrow, also one from Jamar Chase too, because he puts up like 45 touchdowns and leads the league in passing yardage. Chase is on fire. Higgins was on fire before he got hurt. They just had nothing on defense other than Trey Hendrickson, and it wasn't enough. So then the Broncos get in, and boy, you talk about a difference of a year. You look back at last season and Sean Payton and the way things went south with Russell Wilson. Now they bring in the rookie with Bo Nix. Payton gets him going. They've got a pretty darn good defense. Cortland Sutton's a nice player. So, I mean, they're going to be a tough matchup for the Bills because they play defense and they can play some offense too. We'll dive further into that throughout the week, but it is interesting that the two teams that beat the Chiefs this year in varying different fashions were the Bills and the Broncos, and they meet on Wild Card Weekend.
Yeah, and this popped it. Always be careful what you wish for. I know when you looked at the matchup, I mean, you got a rookie quarterback there. You got the Broncos defense playing well. But then it pops into my head. The Broncos beat the Bills at Highmark Stadium last year when Russell Wilson was having a horrible season, Andy. I know Sean McDermott has a great track record against rookie quarterbacks, and Bobby Babich has this defense playing well, and the offense looks like they can score on anybody. So it does match up favorably. And listen, watching the Broncos play on Saturday night or the Bengals play on Saturday night, that offense just looked really dangerous, like they were ready if they got into the playoffs to do some damage.
Now, people will laugh at the way that they blew out the Kansas City Chiefs 38-0, and Bo Nix barely even had a ball touch the ground in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, though, they should have beaten the Chiefs the first time, and they had a field goal blocked, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so, I mean, they gave the Chiefs all they could handle. They beat the Bills last year, different quarterback, but same coach and a lot of the same players. So, I mean, you certainly can't sleepwalk through this week if you're the Bills and just expect to, give me a call in 2 weeks and we're talking about playing the Ravens on divisional round weekend. No, you're going to have to come and play and beat this Broncos team because they're playing well. Bo Nix is confident. Sean Payton's a good, proven Super Bowl winning head coach, and their defense is really good. So, I mean, the Bills will have to play a good game. The bottom line to me is this. They have the best football player on the planet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If not one, he's two right now, or three, somewhere in that, you want to argue, in that realm. And when he's on his game, they're really tough to beat are the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills have lost games where he's been on his game because of defense or special teams. We don't have to go through all of that, but I have confidence because the Bills have Josh Allen, they're going to get this done.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I just a different vibe to this team going into the postseason. Like even today's game in New England, as an example of not having to play anybody as opposed to last year needing to win or looking like they needed to win going into the final week of the season, getting banged up against the Dolphins, getting banged up against the Steelers when the postseason started. Just a different vibe. Josh Allen playing the best ball in all of these playoff runs, Andy, that we've seen, in the confidence in what he's doing, the lack of turnovers, the fact that the defense gets turnovers, just smart football all around. The adjustments we see at halftime. I was even thinking earlier that, should the Bills get down in a playoff game this year, whereas in the past you might write them off, I think they have a different gear, this team right now, that if they do stumble out of the gate, they have the ability to come back.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, as long as you've got Josh Allen playing at the level he's playing right now, you're going to be every game. I do worry a little bit about the Bills' defense. I mean, against good teams, we've seen them struggle to get stops consistently, to create pressure on quarterbacks, to get off the field on third downs, especially third and long, to get off the field at all. So they've got to tighten that up. They've got to get more out of their front four consistently. We've seen flashes. We saw it last week against the Jets where they made Rodgers miserable. But that's a bad Jets team, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to fare against a team that's playing well and has a decent O-line and has a quarterback who's not putting the ball in harm's way? It'll be interesting to see. I mean, that's the one bugaboo you worry about. Special teams, too. Tyler Bass misses an extra point today. You worry a little bit about that. Special teams problems have cropped up throughout this season for the Bills. So offensively, I have no concerns. Even if they start slow, which they've done many times throughout this season, they've had the ability to come back. You just hope it doesn't bite you against a really good team that gets too far gone and doesn't let you come back.
Right, absolutely. So you will have Bills hosting the Broncos. The Chargers head to the Houston Texans. Steelers, Ravens, which is really interesting to start things up just because their familiarity with one another, the way they play against one another, that I think this field, Andy, for the postseason, you could see the Chargers take down Houston, and you could see the Steelers take down the Ravens.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I would have said, oh, if the Ravens play the Steelers, that's great, say if you're the Bills, because then the Steelers are one of those teams that can knock off the Ravens. I think the Steelers stink. I watched them last night. I don't think they're very good. I think they play this hard-nosed, we're always in every game style, but when it's come down to it, they've been terrible down the stretch here. Clock management at the end of that game. So I'm not super confident that Russell Wilson and George Pickens and those guys will have what it takes to take down Lamar Jackson. I certainly think that the Chargers can beat the Texans. I think the Texans have really fallen off. Injuries have hurt them really badly. I mean, you lose Diggs, you lose Tank Dell. Stroud's not playing the same way. So I would actually think that I would favor the Chargers in that case, even though they're on the road. If the Steelers can get back to the way they were playing earlier this season, when they did beat the Ravens, sure. But right now, the way Lamar Jackson is playing at an MVP level and Derrick Henry's rolling, I just don't see it. So to me, if the Bills advance past the Broncos, you're more than likely going to have the Ravens coming to Orchard Park for a rematch. The caveat is if the Steelers can play like they were playing earlier in the season, they could knock them off, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't either. But, they play the games for a reason, Andy, and we'll see how it all plays out. We'll get you ready for Bills Broncos in the middle of the week. Andy, this is big as we head into the postseason. Big Ditch Brewery in downtown Buffalo. Me, Andy Young, Stevie Johnson flying out to Buffalo from California while we speak for a live Buffalo End Zone podcast in front of fans. Free booze, free food. It's already sold out, Andy, but a good way to get down and get some Bills talking coming up this Wednesday.
Yeah, we are really, really fired up about this. Spectrum and Charter Communications have taken a look at what we're doing here, and they're excited about it too. And they wanted to do something big going into the playoffs. So this is the first time in the many years that you and our other colleagues and myself have done Buffalo End Zone and had this podcast that we've taken it live on location on the road to have an episode. So not only will it be on YouTube and Facebook like we always have, and audio afterwards once it goes to iTunes and wherever else, Apple Podcasts. But it'll also be live on Spectrum News 1 on television across the entire state. We'll have questions from fans who are there to talk some football with us, a meet and greet with Stevie Johnson and us. We'll have some media personalities there as well who've also agreed to hop on the podcast for a few minutes with Sal Capaccio, who's WGR's Bills beat reporter and the sideline reporter on the broadcasts, Matt Perino from the Shout podcast in New York Upstate, who does a fantastic job, our friend Elena Getzenberg, longtime friend of the show from ESPN.com. She also appears on TV as well, and some other people too. So who knows who's going to show up at this thing, but it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, and apparently Stevie Johnson is raffling off a rocking chair.
Okay.
Andy,
hey,
your video
that's Stevie, man.
Your video has been questionable to say the least, but your audio has been great. So we're going to wrap things up here, and everything will be hunky-dory and perfect coming up on Wednesday. Bills play host to the Broncos, Super Wild Card Weekend coming up next. Randy Young, I'm Kevin Carroll. Thanks for joining us, everybody.